Assalamu alaikum. Here in this lab, we will talk about the skull and the pituitary gland and its relation. First of all, I would mention that you have you will find more detail when you come to the lab. Okay, so this video will not replace your lab. Okay. So first, as you know from the wrist block, the skull, we can install the skull as anterior aspect or anterior view or norma frontalis. Here is norma lateralis, then here norma occipitalis. When you come from above, this is norma verticalis, norma bezalis. Okay. Also, you can say this is inferior view of the skull, and externally, and this is inferior view of the skull internally from the cranial cavity. The names of the bone and their location and articulation, you already done with this, so you can study it on your own. Here in the norma frontalis, what are the specific structure we need to know here? Okay. We found here the orbital cavity, and as we know, the orbital cavity is conical in shape, large eyeball, and it is related blood vessels and nerve. Okay, so the orbital margin is formed of several bone. Here we have frontal bone, we have zygomatic bone, and especially make more of the lateral margin, lateral part border. Here we have the maxillary bone, and here we have the nasal bone. Okay, so here we have maxilla articulated with frontal bone. Here we have zygomatic articulate with also frontal bone. Okay, we have, and then we have the rest of the bone inside from the wall and borders. For example, at the floor we have the maxilla, mainly is formed of maxilla, and posteriorly we have the sphenoid bone. Okay, again here we have supraorbital notch, and here we have infraorbital foramen. Sometimes this notch, in some individual, it is foramen also, not only notch. Okay, here we have nasolacrimal canal, or to lodge the or give passage to nasolacrimal duct. Okay, I will give another example in the norma frontalis and how you study it. For example, this is the nasal cavity, and as we know, we have the borders here, those are nasal bone. We have here, this is maxillary bone. Okay, this is maxillary bone. Those two bones here, we form what we call piriform foramen or piriform aperture, which means the passage or the entrance into the nasal cavity. Here we have the anterior nasal spine. Here in the middle we have this bony part of the septum, and as you know, this form of toe bone. This one is humor, and the bone come from above is perpendicular plate of ethmoid bone. Okay, we have the concha, of course, on the lateral wall, and as we know, superior and middle concha are part of the ethmoid bone, and the inferior concha is a separate bone. Okay, so you have to study the details of the skull like this. Okay, I gave just 2 examples in the norma frontalis because we have no time. Okay, now I will go to the most important part, norma or the interior view. Okay, here this is called cranial cavity or cranial fossa, sorry, all of it is cranial cavity. Okay, so this is cranial fossa. We have 3 cranial fossae: anterior cranial fossa, middle cranial fossa, and posterior cranial fossa. Okay. The anterior cranial fossa, here we have this part. This is called crista galli. Okay, crista galli. It is elevated ridge from the ethmoid bone. On the lateral side of it, we have cribriform plate of ethmoid bone that made of small foramina or perforated by small foramina for olfactory nerve. Okay. The laser wing of sphenoid bone separate the or make border for anterior cranial fossa and middle cranial fossa. Then here we have the middle cranial fossa. Okay, on the middle cranial fossa, here, yes, in the middle cranial fossa, you see it is bounded anteriorly by laser wing of sphenoid bone, posteriorly by petrous part of the temporal bone. This is petrous part of the temporal bone. In the middle, we have the body of sphenoid bone that contain the sella turcica. Okay, we have a lot of foramina in the middle cranial fossa. It is extend here. See here between the greater wing, laser wing of sphenoid bone, we have the superior orbital fissure. If I make it like this, maybe yes. Here, this is superior orbital fissure. This superior orbital fissure. Then here at the end of the laser wing or at the base of anterior clinoid process, we have the optical canal. Optic canal. Okay, here this is for optic canal. Okay, then we have the same line like this. We have this one. Okay, so here this one. This is the foramen rotundum. You know, superior orbital fissure and optic canal communicate between the middle cranial fossa and between the orbital cavity. Then we have foramen rotundum, and foramen rotundum communicate between the middle cranial fossa and the trigopalatine fossa. Just behind to the foramen rotundum, we have large oval shaped foramen. This is called foramen ovale, and foramen ovale again communicate between middle cranial fossa and infratemporal fossa. Here. You see here? I want you to see this here. Here, okay? So here is middle cranial fossa, and here, as you see, this area is called infratemporal fossa. Okay? Behind foramen ovale, we have another small foramen, also communicate middle cranial fossa with infratemporal fossa, and this is called foramen spinosum. Each fossa has specific structure that pass through. Each fossa has a specific structure that pass through. For example, optic canal, it is for the optic nerve and ophthalmic artery. Okay, superior superior orbital fissure, for example, is for many of the cranial nerve number 3, 4, 5, first division of 5, and also ophthalmic vein. Okay, superior ophthalmic vein. So foramen ovale, for example, for the mandibular division of trigeminal nerve, foramen spinosum. So then we have foramen spinosum for the nervus spinosus and middle meningeal artery. Also, yeah, there is another. It's actually is not foramen. In the individual, it is closed by cartilage in the living individual. But now here you can see it like a large hole. This is called foramen cecum. Okay, this one, it is form part of the floor of the carotid canal for the internal carotid artery. Okay, so in the posterior cranial fossa also you find ridge and grooves for the sinuses, dural sinus, dural venous sinus, like this. This is for sigmoid sinus, this is for transverse sinus. Okay, you have we have another foramen. For example, this is inner ear or internal acoustic meatus. This is jugular foramen. This is hypoglossal canal, and of course, this is largest foramen of the skull is called foramen magnum. Also, you have to know every single details of the structure that pass through in or out each foramen in this view. Okay, here is norma bezalis. See here, this is from front going backward. This is incisive foramen for incisive canal. Here, this is hard palate. It's form of two part of bone, maxilla anteriorly and palatine bone posteriorly, transverse processes or horizontal plates. Then here we have the posterior nasal spine. So we have anterior nasal spine anteriorly here, and we have posterior nasal spine posteriorly. Okay. Also form of both maxillae. This is for attachment of the uvula actually, or sorry, the soft palate in general. Also here we have the posterior nasal aperture. Okay, we have two, or we said cornea. Okay, here we have pterygoid plates. This is lateral, this large one is lateral pterygoid plate, and this is medial pterygoid plate. Between them we have the pterygoid fossa, and this is small part is called pterygoid hamulus. It's called what? Pterygoid hamulus. Okay. here we have in this point here, okay, we have this fossa. It's called mandibular fossa for articulation of the head of the mandible to form temporomandibular joint, okay, with temporal bone. This fossa here, okay, this fossa, okay. Anterior to it we have this called the scaphoid spine in the sphenoid bone. Here is styloid process of the temporal bone. Here is mastoid process of the temporal bone, okay. So here is external acoustic meatus, of course, external acoustic meatus. So here, if you look, this is part also of the carotid canal here. This is part of carotid canal, and this is carotid foramen here, carotid foramen. Yes, here, of course, foramen magnum, and the other structure, or the same foramen that you see in the Bezalis. Here, from the interior view, you can see it also from Bezalis, normal Bezalis, okay? So this is foramen ovale, foramen spinosum, okay? And this is carotid canal, or the bony part here of the carotid canal, and here is foramen lacrum, okay, foramen lacrum, jugular foramen, okay. So again, you have to know each single detail that pass in and out the cranial cavity through this foramina, okay, and to which area they go. Thank you. This is sphenoid bone, okay. Here on the sphenoid bone, on the body of the sphenoid bone, this part, as we know, is called sella turcica, okay. This part is called sella turcica, and it lodges the pituitary gland. This is pituitary gland, okay. Here, this is pituitary gland. Here is, you see here, zoom into this, yeah, here. So this is sella turcica again. This is called dorsum sillae here. This part here is called dorsum sillae, and the dorsum sillae is bounded here by this elevated part here is called posterior clinoid process. Posterior clinoid process, right and left. See here, this is pituitary fossa or hypophyseal fossa within the sella turcica, okay. Here we have anterior on both sides. We have here anterior clinoid process here for attachment of the tentorium serpelli, okay. This is anterior clinoid process, okay. So the hypophyseal fossa, it is covered by this partition of dura mater, and this is called diaphragma sellae. So this here is diaphragma sellae, okay, of the hypophyseal fossa. We have on both sides, we have here both sides we have the cavernous sinus, okay. We have right and left cavernous sinus, and we know cavernous sinus, it's a pocket of dura mater, contains venous blood, and also contain, or we have some of the cranial nerve pass in or on the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. Okay, so inside the cavernous sinus we find the internal carotid artery, okay, and abducens nerve. On the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus we find the third cranial nerve, fourth cranial nerve, ophthalmic division of the trigeminal nerve. Okay, so here we have the ophthalmic. Okay, again, I think this one is better. So above to the pituitary gland we have the diaphragma cell, and this area here, this area is called supracellular cistern. Supracellular cistern, and it contains the pituitary stalk also. Upper part of the pituitary stalk is contain the optic chiasma. You see here, this is optic chiasma, and part of the optic tract here, optic tract and optic nerve. You can see this structure fairly, but this transverse section. Okay, so this region here, actually you look like this. Okay, here is pituitary gland, and this here, and this here is this pituitary stalk. Okay, between, it is immersed between the two optic tract and behind the optic chiasma. This is optic chiasma. This is optic chiasma. So this is pituitary stalk behind the optic chiasma and between the two optic tract. This is of course optic nerve. This is optic nerve. Okay. So if the pituitary is here in the supracellular cistern, again we have the stalk, we have the chiasma, we have optic tract and optic nerve beside the intracranial or supraarachnoid part of the here, supraarachnoid part of the internal carotid artery. Okay. Posterior to the dorsum cellae, here we have interpeduncular cistern, and this cistern of course contain the apex of the basilar artery, okay, and also contain the third and fourth cranial nerves. Okay. Anterior and inferiorly, here to the sella turcica, we have here, this is sphenoid bone. Okay, so this is sphenoid air sinus. This is sphenoid air sinus. Can find it in more. Yes, here. In this transverse section here, you see, those are sphenoid air sinus, so are in direct relation with hypophyseal fossa. Okay, direct relation. This is internal carotid artery. The internal carotid artery, This is just the inferior part of the optic nerve. Okay.